Okay, so now we're going to make outer block 1, which is the snowman block. It'll be 3 snowmen singing carols. So we're going to turn on the machine, and then my hoop is removed. You never want the arm to move with your hoop on it. So we'll hit OK so it can move to home position. It always starts that way. And now we are not going to resume the last pattern. The last pattern was main block 12, which was the church. So I'm going to hit the X. I want to open up outer block 1. So we're going to hit File Open. We're going to hit the USB stick. There is a USB stick in there, but every once in a while okay. If that happens, you can jiggle your stick a little bit and see if that works. Otherwise, you can get a new stick, put it on a new stick, and all of that kind of stuff. If you get really confused, just call me and we will work it out together. Since it decided to recognize the USB stick, I think it remembered where it was last time. So I'm going to select my Juju tree skirt folder. Again, I'm doing the large, so it's 8 by 12, small is 5 by 7, medium is 6 by 10. I'm doing large. I'm going to do an outer block. And these I've been telling you that they can be very hard to tell with the little icons. There's only 2 outer blocks. There's the 3 snowmen and the 1 gift. If you can't tell the difference, you can select your longer file description button, but I happen to know that one is the snowman. So I'm going to go ahead and open it. And again, it opened to the ready to sew screen, which is fine, except it says check your hoop, and the hoop it's coming up with is 28B, which isn't the hoop I have. So we always change our hoop in the grid screen, hit the home button, hit the grid screen. When we get here, we're going to hit the button that looks like our hoop. I have to hit over down at the bottom with my little arrows at the bottom to get to 36B, which is the hoop I have. So now it's on 36B. We hit OK to go back to ready to sew. Okay. I have my stabilizer hooped up. That was in how to hoop stabilizer was in the video for inner block 9, which was the first block we did. And now we're going to go over and we're going to attach our hoop, and we're going to start our stitch out. Here's the paper you should have. It has both outer blocks on there. We're using outer block 1, which is the snowman. And again, you guys are going to stitch the first several steps in white, which is color 10. I'm going to stitch my placement and tack down lines in gray so you can see what happens. Okay, so I have my gray thread all loaded up and ready to go. You should load up white. And the first thing we're going to do is stitch out the placement line for the batting. So as I mentioned before, if your machine has trouble getting these placement line when it's stitching on only stabilizer, if it has trouble making your stitches or keeping your stitches, a lot of times they pull out a nice long piece of thread. Just let it lay there and go ahead and get started. We're going to stitch almost a whole side before we trim our threads. So we've got a nice long start there. I'm going to grab my snips, and I'm gonna have a mess. So I'm going to take it apart. I'm going to snip my threads so that they don't get tangled up or tangled around the foot of my machine. And we're going to let the machine stitch out the placement line. I don't know if you can see, my stabilizer is a little thin here. It was the beginning of the roll, and when I pulled the tape off, it pulled at that a little bit. That's okay. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and cover my entire placement line with my batting, and again, I'm using scrap batting, so mine often has little fuzzies on it that I have to pull off. That's okay. And then make it all nice and smooth and lower my presser foot and then I'm gonna get that started. And it's a tack down stitch, so it's going to stitch it twice. It's gonna stitch over itself. Once the tack down line is finished, we're going to trim our batting as close to the tack down line as we can without cutting the stitching or our stabilizer underneath. So I usually, said before, take this off. Actually, I want to turn it. Your duckbill goes under your batting. I know I'm not at the best angle for you guys here. Okay, there we go. Okay. If you see any spots that the batting is really sticking out, go ahead and trim them away so your batting doesn't peek out later on. And then we're going to put it back on, and we're going to add our background fabric. So it completely covers the batting. And then we are going to stitch that down. I will meet you back here when that is done. Okay, ladies, so we've got our tack down line stitched out, and you can see I've changed to white thread because now we're going to stitch out the snowmen. So what we're going to do now is we're just going to follow along. These are the steps. These are those same steps here, what it's going to stitch, and the color numbers you should use. So I'm just going to start stitching those out, and you should do the same thing at home. And I will meet you back here. Okay, you guys, I've been waiting for 3 videos to be able to show you what happens, what do you do when something like this happens. This looks big and scary, and it looks like you've got a big, huge mess, when all that happened is it ran out of bobbin, okay? But it's stitching over here because the machine doesn't know it runs out of bobbin because I have my bobbin sensor turned off. And so it continued to keep going. So what we have to do is clean up this mess, and then we have to get the stitching back to line up over here where it ran out of bobbin, okay? So this is easy. I'm just gonna grab, my snips have walked off, so I'm just gonna use this pair of scissors that's sitting here. And I get rid of all the extra thread, clean it up, and then I take this off and I flip it over to make sure there's not a mess on the back. And there's a small one, so I'm going to trim up those threads, which I know it's hard to see. It's white on white, but they're snowmen. Nobody wants yellow snowmen. And then I change my bobbin, so I just pull it out and grab my new bobbin and drop it in and load it up. And now the stitching part of the machine is all ready to go, but if I let it go, it's going to keep going on the snowman, in the middle snowman, and that's not what we want. So now you need to know a little bit about your screen in order to get it back to be where it's supposed to. Okay, so on your screen, we've talked before about here's your design, And down here are your colors, and it's working on step number 4, which is white. Up here, right above it, and I'm going to grab a stylus, right above it right here, this is your stitch count, okay? So the entire design has 26,219 stitches in it, and it stopped on stitch about 5,800. So we need to get it back, and I think I just made my little, there it is. We need to get the crosshairs back. The crosshairs is your needle, okay, where your needle is going to drop. And it quit stitching over here on this snowman. So all we're going to do is hold this down, hold down the minus because we need to go backwards. Make sure your presser foot is up, and you're just going to hold this down for a really long time. This is kind of boring actually. But you're just going to let it go. Eventually it starts jumping 10 and 100 stitches at a time. We're just going to hold it until it gets back to where we need it to be. And this isn't exactly an exact science. It's sort of an estimated one. Okay, so now we're back on the right snowman. So okay. See how it's starting to move over the stitches it already did. So we're going to go ahead. You just want to go back. Actually, I'm not sure. We don't need to redo those. Okay, so when we're about to where I think we should be, what I do is I drop my needle to see if I am over some stitches that we already did. I'm just going to let it go after we get down here. If it goes over stuff, it's okay. All right, you just don't want to miss stitches that you already had. So when I get to here and I use my hand wheel and I lower my needle, and it looks like we're about where it quit stitching. So we're just going to hit start, and we're going to see and it's actually what it's doing is redoing the stitches it already did. It's not to the satin stitches yet. And remember, the satin stitches are the long stitches that go over the stitches of the base it laid. So I'm going to go forward until we've done all of that part. I went back farther than I thought. Sometimes it can be hard to find your spot. Okay, I'm going to let it go from here. Okay, and it's going to stitch over stuff it already did, but again, stitching over is fine, you just don't want to have holes. You could have stitched over all of that, but that's kind of a waste of thread. Okay, so now we are going to let it, I'm going to go ahead and let it finish stitching the white snowmen. I'm going to stitch through most of the rest of the design the way we talked about before, and then I will meet you back here. Okay? See you in a little bit. Okay, ladies, so it's all finished up. So all I'm going to do now is grab my tweezers and my snips and clean up the block. And then what you will do next is put the blocks all together, stitch them together the way you will see in the opening video, the introductory video for this month, the sort of overview thing. So you will see these there, you will figure out there how to trim them up and put them together. And as always, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to call us or email Megan or call the shop and talk to Megan or Jan. Okay? Good luck!